friends, this is the program Empire of Lies, where we discuss manipulation and disinformation in the Russian media, Thieves England and the hijacking of the Dagger, why Russian TV needs a new enemy #1. In the latest episode of Evening with Solovyov, we see a complete framework for a grand explanation of the world. A good Russia fends off the sinister machinations of London, NATO, and foreign agents, while simultaneously strengthening ties with its post-Soviet neighbours. Viewers aren't offered anything verifiable on the factual level. They're treated to hints, theories, and confirmations from anonymous sources. But on the policy level, we have a clear program. This program isn't aimed at Ukraine or even the United States. It's aimed at Europe case anchor, MiG-31 hijacking, as a magic key to all doors. The main sensation of the episode is the story of a Ukrainian intelligence operation allegedly foiled by the FSB, an attempt to hijack a MiG-31 with a Kinjal missile and fly it through Romanian airspace to a base in Constanta. Then there are three versions of the goal: drawing NATO into the war, shooting down the aircraft and passing it off as a Russian attack, or stealing the launch vehicle and studying the technology. What matters isn't whether this can or can't be proven. What matters is how the meaning is constructed. Any escalation is the West's fault. Even if we're talking about a hypothetical scenario, the blame is already assigned. British intelligence services, mercenaries, underhanded work through social media. NATO is an unreliable neighbour. Romania appears in the picture as a platform for provocations and false flags. The logical connection is simple. The EU equals NATO, NATO equals risk, which means European involvement in supporting Ukraine is a threat to Europe's own security, techno-fetish and fear. The word dagger and the image of a ghost plane act as emotional levers, not as facts. The viewer is sold a feeling of being on the edge and offered a simple solution: less support for Ukraine, more dialogue with Moscow. The Western world has become increasingly divided in its rhetoric. Trump from Washington declares that there will be no third world war. He's turned everything into a sham. He's not being heard in Europe, where Steinmeier insists on the Russian threat and calls on everyone to intervene. The UK has its own take on the FAS team. Having used Ukraine as a testing ground, they are now teaching Ukrainians how to stage provocations and are actively participating in them themselves. Russia's Federal Security Service, FSB, uncovered and thwarted a GUR operation to hijack a Russian MiG-31 fighter jet armed with a Kinjal missile. The ultimate goal is to draw NATO into a war with Russia by striking a military base in Romania. Another possibility is to shoot down the fighter jet when, in their opinion, it is ready to attack the base in Romania, thereby demonstrating Russia's aggressive intentions and enabling the transfer of long-range weapons to the Ukrainian military, as well as directly engaging in the conflict themselves, enforcing a no-fly zone. The third version is to steal a modern aircraft with a means of destruction that causes panic, in order to use it both for propaganda purposes and to carefully study the latest examples of Russian technology. Removable enemy. England is always guilty. To alleviate unnecessary questions from the audience, the programme needs a personalised adversary. Once again, Great Britain is designated as the adversary. The host and guests portray London as a former empire with a weak army, yet an omnipresent puppeteer. It is to London that they attribute the following: recruitment of Russian military personnel through social media, constructing media scandals, the Skripal case, the MH17 investigations, coordination of provocations in the Black Sea and on NATO's eastern flank. The semantic focus is to delegitimize sources of information in Europe. When the phrase Bellingcat is an intelligence project is heard, no further discussion is made of forensic data, court decisions, or international investigations. Any independent verification is declared part of a British conspiracy. This isn't polemics, it's a method of shutting down discussion in a circuit, repression as a legislative technique. The story seamlessly shifts from an external enemy to a domestic one. The following ideas are endorsed on air. Expand the definitions of treason and cooperation with foreign intelligence services, including life imprisonment. Extend liability for treason to actions outside the Russian Federation. Return to Soviet-era methods in dealing with traitors. This block is not the background, but the core. The hijacking of the Dagger London narrative is needed to normalize repressive legislation. If the enemy is omnipresent, then any contact points with Europe are a risk. As a result, everything is under attack, from journalism and academic exchanges to transit IT professionals and the diaspora. External window dressing, a multi-move with Kazakhstan. Against this backdrop, the Kazakh president's visit to Moscow is depicted, with emphasis on the protection of the Su-35 and a warm, informal meeting. The message is twofold. 1. Russia is not isolated, it has friends. 2. Moscow is the center of gravity for the post-Soviet space, despite the war and sanctions. For the European reader, there are two important points here. First, the Kremlin is demonstrating resilience in Central Asia, precisely in a region where the EU is attempting to develop transport corridors bypassing Russia. Secondly, Russian TV is shifting the conversation from Ukraine to the more comfortable track of Eurasian integration. The world is changing, Europe is marginalized. Think, analyze, draw conclusions, and don't be fooled. This was the program Empire of Lies.